You are now tuning in to the Val and Val Show, where conversation is art. Art, art, art. Conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what to spark on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no telling. The Val and Val Show. You know, ain't no telling where we go on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no ceiling, cause the art of conversation is the flow. It's that creativity available when we speak, available in our homes, available in the streets. We just trying to get it sparking and take it a little deeper. Keep it casual while fireside chatting with our people. Yeah, we take it a little deeper. It get hot when we fireside chatting with our people. Cause conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what'll spark on the Val. The Val and Val Show. The Val and Val Show.
What's up?
Hello.
What's up? What's up, people? I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I don't hear you. Holler back at your boy. What's up,
How
Auntie
y'all
Val?
doing? I'm I'm doing okay.
Well,
I'm
good.
doing
Good to see
okay.
you.
Good to
Yeah, I
see
know.
you.
Since we're in this heat wave,
Tell me about
it's
it.
kind of
Tell me
it's kind of
about it.
difficult to survive this thing. But we hope everybody has had a good day. Although it is hot, 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 we encourage you to stay hydrated and to stay in as much as possible. And we want to give a shout out to our postal workers tonight and just tell them to be really, really careful. You all are out there on the front lines, much like our first responders. And although the first responders have a medium of having some way of protecting themselves, you guys can only slam the door of your 10 trucks and drive off or spray something with some mace. But I understand there have been three robberies here in Birmingham of our postal workers. And we want
Wow.
to just say, hey guys, be careful, watch your back, watch your front and your sides for that matter. And if it doesn't look right, keep going. Take that mail back to the station. Somebody'll fix it. Don't throw it away. I didn't say throw it away. I said take it back to the station. But anyway, y'all just be
So
careful,
eventually they'll
everybody,
get it.
please.
Yeah.
Because
That
if
most
these if these
definitely.
if these if these knuckleheads or take a stuff from a letter carrier, the next thing we're trying to do is go inside the darn post office.
Tell me
So
about it.
they probably need to put a barrier between them and the counter and put a little chute in there. If you want to buy a stamp, you got to put your money in this little machine and your stamp will come out or throw the quarter over the counter and they'll toss you a book of stamps.
You really going ancient now, Beth. You really going
Well,
ancient.
I mean, something has to give because these fellas out here don't care. They're brazen. They're doing things broad daylight. They don't care. So extreme measures calls for extreme results, or vice
True.
versa, however you wish to say it. So
Very
some
true.
things need to be adjusted. We can't live in the 1990s in 2022. That just doesn't work, in my opinion. So I got theories on how we can curtail this crime. You do this, you do the crime, and you do something to somebody. Same shall be done unto you.
Tell me
That's
about it.
just how I
Yeah.
feel about it. You know.
Well, y'all heard it from Balton. He's gonna solve these problems, and I'm gonna pray for
Well,
him
I've
while
already
he's
solved it.
doing.
They just won't vote for me.
Well, look, welcome everyone. We
Yeah.
have a great show for you tonight. I'm so excited because
Yes.
the lady we have on tonight, she has done something that I wish would have been available for my children when they were younger. I had
Hmm.
to get real creative because we know in this world where we're only about 13% of the population, there's not much representation of us in many spaces, even though we are
Right.
in some spaces, but definitely not when it comes to books, literature, movies, or anything that our
Hmm.
brown and black kids can see themselves. So we have someone that said enough of that already, and she's going to do something about it. So
Yep.
tonight, you are going to get to meet Dr. Thomisha Booker, who is a self published children's book author, but she's also a licensed therapist. And
Right.
as we always do on here, we just give you a little tidbits. I'm gonna bring Dr. Booker in, and she's gonna share with you all who she is, what she's about, and how she came about deciding to do this. So welcome, Dr. Booker.
Dr.
Welcome.
B. What's up, Dr.
Hey,
B?
how you doing?
That's right. And
Doing
first,
fine.
Dr. Booker, I do want to offer our condolences. We had our schedule earlier, but you lost your grandmother. Understand this?
Yes,
So we
Yeah,
pray that you and your
that's
family
right.
are adjusting to that because that's a major matriarch taken out
yes,
of the chain. So hopefully,
yes,
navigating that well.
Right.
yes. We are.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Thomisha Booker, let's tell the folks where you're from. Give them some background on you.
So just call me Tamisha or Mishi. My friends and family call me Mishi.
Hey,
So I'm
BC.
from. Hey, I'm from Eastside San Jose, California. Originally, that's where I grew up. And was raised by my mom. I was also raised in a family. My grandmother is white, my mom's biracial, black and white. So a lot of what I write about comes from that experience, especially being raised primarily for some time by a white woman. That sort of colored, if you will, just the trajectory of my life and some of the things that I have written. And I started Hey Carter books this is our fifth year this year. And it was while I was pregnant with my son. And I, at that time, was just struggling with everything that comes with being a mom. I just felt so confused and not ready to step into motherhood. And so I turned to writing at that time to just sort of express myself. It started with a blog where I was just sharing everything that I was feeling and going through at that time in hopes of just connecting with one other person who was feeling the same about my story. And, when I found out I was having a son, I felt the heaviness of that. I really, really, it was 5 days after my son was born, Philando Castile was murdered. And I
Mm,
just felt the heaviness of what it was going to mean to bring a Black son into this world. And I wanted to do something about that. And I never imagined, going to school for social work and psychology, that I would then turn my skill sets to writing children's books. But it actually is a beautiful compliment and feels like a good space that I'm meant to be in. And I find myself pulling from all of my experiences. And so I just created Hey Carter Books, which is really about elevating Black joy and putting Black boys specifically front and center. I get a lot of questions about, like, oh, what about the girls? And, now we have a daughter. So, of course, we'll have some things for her. But
That's right. That's right.
go to Target and get a book right now, or Walmart with a Black girl on the front. And, of course, our girls need lots of support and need those items as well. But I really noticed that Black boys were not on the front cover of children's books. And I needed and wanted the world to see my son the way I saw him, and same thing for other Black and brown boys as well. So that's sort of the beginning of how Hey Carter Books
Okay.
was born.
okay.
All right.
I was listening to you with your social work background. I could very well see you leaning into that because I know me being a nurse, we rely very much on social workers, and you all
Yes.
get to see a lot of
Mhm.
things,
Yes.
especially if you're working with children, or in our case, being a self-reporting field, we would have to notify of suspected
Mhm.
abuse and various things. So it's probably was easy for you to write it because you had probably dealt with some of the
Yes.
things you saw. You mentioned your
Yes.
son with Philando Castile. I remember when Trayvon was murdered, and it was a
Yes.
very surreal moment for me because my son about that time was about 14, and
Mhm.
interestingly enough, he had a hoodie that was very similar to the one that Trayvon was wearing, and it changed our whole lives because now we had to really re-navigate now
Right.
how we're raising this young man. We were raising him right, but it's like, okay, beware of this because
Mhm.
do this. It was like we had to go to Mac 10, I would call it now, and training our kids to be in a defensive mode when they should have been able to be children. You know
Kids.
what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So
Yes.
they have not been. So let's talk before we get into the book. Let's talk about what was your son's perception? How did he feel just knowing mommy is writing a book really for me and about me, named after him?
It's so funny because people always ask me, like, what does Carter think about it? And it's still kind of clicking for him. I mean, of course, he's constantly surrounded by books. I think being a therapist, I'm constantly pouring into him, teaching him how to have this positive inner voice, right? And so I think he benefits from that way. But recently, I just released my new book, Froze, Braids, Fades, and Waves, which I used a different style of illustration, and it has the illustrator Starvos Pierce. He's from New Orleans, and he paints, and so he painted the illustrations, and so like the hair textures and the facial features really pop. And so when Carter saw himself there, he actually was like, "Oh, it's me." And I was like, "Boy, I have a whole book series and everything with your face on it." But I think for him, he wasn't making that connection. Like, he knows mommy writes books, I'm the main character, but it's still in a very cartoon way. So when he saw this, he was like, "Oh, that's me," and was really, really overjoyed with it. And I think he loves it, especially when I go to his school and the kids know about the books as well. But I think it's really slowly starting to really hit him like, "Oh, wow," And I hope he continues to love it and, embrace it. Sometimes kids can be sometimes embarrassed of their parents, but he
True.
loves it. I do lots of affirmations in the house, and my books are all about just speaking life into children. And you can see that he does that a lot. He's a very confident child.
Yeah, and
This is
I've
this is
noticed.
really cool website you have here too.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the products you have: the brown Boy Joy hat
Yes.
and the Boy Joy button. That's really cool.
Yes. Yes. We want our, Black boys to feel proud of who they are, and to wear clothes that they feel represents them and are prideful. So to me, Brown Boy Joy it's more than just a book. It's a movement, it's a feeling, it's um it's a revolutionary act. So it's my baby.
So, and as I was doing my research on you, I was looking at this. I was like, wow, you've covered a lot of ground. Forbes Women,
Yeah,
Mhm.
the
taking
late the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, who I love.
That one was
Today,
that's one of my favorite features, Stephen Colbert, because I was not expecting that at all. I had no idea it was happening. I was on the phone with one of my sorority sisters, and she's like, "Do you know you're on the Stephen Colbert show?" And I said, "No, I don't."
no.
And we turned there, and there he was writing a poem, and with me included. And it was during the time where they were talking about books you can read instead of Dr. Seuss. So I just
Hmm.
felt so honored to be a part of that. And as a self-published author, it's hard. It's hard to get the word out. It's hard to market your books, and so to be on that platform is definitely by far one of my favorite features, for sure.
That's great. Simple and awesome. And I saw the Today Show, NBC, and Vanity Fair. And there were
Yes.
more, but those were just some I wrote down. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm happy to see you have done
right.
this. Like I said, when my daughter was young, it was very, very limited. And my son, there was more,
Yeah.
a little bit more for him, but not that much. But going back to our boys,
Mhm.
we're really in a time where they really need to be built up, because we are one extreme. We have the extreme of those that are in stable environments, and then we have the stream of those are just trying to figure it out and just faltering and just lost. And
Mhm.
I'm a big defender and an advocate, because I hate to hear grown folks say, "Well, these children just running around," and I'm like, where'd they get it from? I mean, at the scope of the day, us adults don't act very mature in a lot of these platforms. I mean, from the top leadership down to our country to the
Mhm.
basis. And I do believe no child wants to be a failure or out here doing these crimes. But when they're in communities where there's blight, there's poverty, they're gonna look up to the guy that's selling drugs or doing some type of illegal activity. And the easy way, if you like 10 and they lay you $20 or $50 to run to the corner store, be a lookout. unless you have a stable environment, you're gonna take that money, especially if you're in a home that's struggling. So, with you being a social worker as well and a licensed therapist,
Mhm.
what are some, from your perspective, what do you think are some of the drivers where we're having, like within our communities, the shootings, the violence? Because it happened in others, but ours get blown up more on TV. So what are some of the things you think may attribute to this?
Well, I mean, it's a systemic issue. It's not something that we can just point at one singular thing. I mean, we have to look at the systems and the way that the systems were designed. They were not designed for us as Black people to be successful. So we are seeing our children, Black families, we're seeing the response to that, even in families where you have children who have turned to the streets because that's where they're fulfilling a need, or that's been the trajectory of their life. Their parents even did not have the opportunity to be set up for success. I mean,
Okay.
any way that we turn as Black people, we are constantly reaching barriers or reaching systems that we cannot get through. I mean, it's so multi-layered, and we just have so many barriers to get through. And so this is really why I focus on just elevating our joy as well, because we have Black men and Black boys who are weaponized, who are dehumanized, and just
Mm,
because of who they are. And you were speaking about Trayvon Martin and wearing a hoodie, and what makes me really sad about that is it doesn't matter what we're wearing. It doesn't
Right.
matter what we do. There's
true.
always going to be a target on our back. We're always going to have the system stacked against us. So it's sad because our boys, and as parents, we're like, we have to do things differently. We have to raise our children differently. But it's also unfair to put that onus on us and on them when that's not on us. It doesn't matter what our kids wear, it still will have that same outcome. And so it's really about trying to change these systems that we have out there and stand up against white supremacy and just the systematic oppression that our people are experiencing.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Booker, because being
Mhm,
that you are from biracial,
mhm,
how did you navigate the worlds? Because obviously, looking at you, you're just a pure Black, so that's what you're going to
mhm.
be labeled
Yes,
as.
yes.
What were some of the things you struggled with, or maybe some, are you, and the benefits as well? What do you think was advantages, disadvantages? I'll say.
So I do not identify as biracial. I do. I definitely just identify as Black, although my grandmother is white and my mom is biracial, and I was raised by the two of them. Now, when you're raised by a white woman, and also my mom, who's also very light skinned, so her proximity to whiteness is there.
Hmm.
I always say, and my grandma, if you're listening, she knows I love her. You did the best job that you could do. But a white woman raising a Black child, especially a Black child with dark skin, you can never understand what it's like to walk around the world as me. So there was definitely a disconnect in that space. There were also just a lot of hurtful things said. I mean,
Mm,
aside from I have two grandfathers who are both dark skinned, both on my father's side and my mother's side. And the three of us are the only dark skinned people in our family. And me growing up,
okay.
I was the only dark skinned in my family. So dark skinned person in my family. So lots of comments, made, lots of just misunderstandings. There was not, and my mom also, raised by her mother, we didn't receive a lot of message about to be prideful of who you are as a Black woman,
Okay.
as a Black person, to be prideful of your hair, your facial features, all of that. That's not messages that she received, and therefore she did not carry those on to me. So it took me a long time to arrive at who I am today, to arrive at just accepting all of my Blackness, lots of anti-Black
Gotcha.
rhetoric in my life growing up, and just not really feeling like I was, beautiful, not appreciation for my hair. I mean, for so long, I mean, to be on this interview with my natural hair today is
Yes.
such a, um, you know, an example of the growth and the healing that I have had throughout my life, because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, this would not have been the case. So it has been an ongoing process for me to arrive there. And you still hear the things in my family, but I'm definitely at a point where I'm able to address those things and have some very
Okay.
difficult conversations with my mother and my grandmother around what it means to be a Black woman and what I expect in terms of their respect and how they speak to me and treat me. Now, in terms of the advantages, I mean, when a white woman walks through the door, she's wearing her white privilege. And, sometimes there were definitely things that were afforded to us by our relationship, but there are also a lot of times where people didn't even see us as connected. Lots of like, oh, you're with her, or how do you know
Okay.
her? Um, so yeah, I'm trying to think back. I know definitely there were advantages, but when I look back on my experiences, mostly sticks out to me some of the more painful experiences for sure.
With that, yeah. You
Mhm.
reminded me of Trevor Noah. He talks a lot about colorism, you know,
Mhm.
and him
Yes.
being Irish too. And he talked his grandmother, she says dad, Gigi talked about how when they went out in public, she couldn't walk because of his skin. She
Mm.
couldn't be seen with him. So it was like walking ahead and everything. So that was very interesting to see. And I have a good friend who was very fair skinned, and she
Mhm.
talked about not fitting in either worlds, black or white, because she had a white dad. And my grandmother, who was very fair skinned, and my mother extremely dark like her dad. And growing up, my grandmother giving some of the little kids, call them like Blackie. She was very
Mhm.
struck with colorism. And it wasn't until, of course, I had gotten grown and came off, and I had, learning better. I had a conversation with her. I was, grandmother, do you know how hard that is
Mhm.
for you to be
Mm.
calling this child Blackie? And I do
Yes.
believe, even though she's an adult today, that damaged her
Oh yeah.
greatly. Great, because what you're saying is that if you're darker, you can never be as beautiful, or you're
Right.
not as valued with
Right.
everything.
Right.
So
And
it's
it's so painful to have a nickname associated with the color of your skin, even,
yes.
dark or light. Like that's just it's so, and it's been years of how, post-traumatic how that all impacts us. And that's all, from there as well. This is why my first book, My Brown Skin, why I wrote that book. It really is helping children build a positive association with the color brown, and
Hmm.
really talking about all the main characters' favorite things that are brown. And for a long time, I could not really even say that that was really a letter to my inner child. I was really focused on, this is for Carter, this is what this is for
Hmm.
him. But really, in writing that book, it's all the things that I wanted to hear growing up. And I know children really need to hear. When I first started as an early childhood mental health therapist in San Jose, I would see kids super young coming in to get support and saying how they wanted different color hair or different color skin,
Mm.
and just not satisfied or not able to see the beauty in who they are.
It is. You made me think about that experiment they did, with the black dolls and the white dolls.
Yes,
And
yes,
how,
yes.
and
Love
people,
that
we're in the world,
part.
they're like, well, that's over. No, it's not over.
No, it's
The
not.
racism
Yeah,
and things we deal with. And it's not making excuses, because I often say this, it seems like every time we get a gain in something, the rules of engagement change.
of
And
course.
so we're always having to strive harder and do more. And that's something I told my kids. I said, no, you don't. You be who you
Exactly.
are.
I'm
And
so glad you
whatever
said
God
that.
has for you, yeah, for whatever
Yes,
God has for you, it's going to happen for you. Because I was
yes.
telling someone, one of the most overused words is resilience. I almost don't like
Mhm.
it anymore.
Right,
Um,
right.
And when I looked it up, I was like, it says to overcome you. If you live in a constant state of having to overcome, you're exhausted. You're not even
Yeah.
enjoying life because
Right.
you're trying to achieve. Now you said your son is how old now?
He'll be 6. He'll be 6
6,
in
and
2
your
weeks.
daughter.
2. Mhm.
Oh, no, look, you better be working on that girl book because you.
I know it's when I release books, I love to release more at once, and I learned from my first go around to do that. So I'm hoping to get a full series out at once for her. So we got about 2 of them done, and I'm hoping to do between 2 and 5. So this year
Okay.
you'll see it for sure.
Okay, that'll be great. That'll be because
Yes.
I don't have any. I don't even have any young like nephews, but I have friends with young boys and stuff. So this will be my gifts because
Yes.
I'm a reader and I love gifting books and everything. So and we'll definitely be promoting you and sharing your information so
Thank you.
that we can start supporting each other and getting
Yes.
things out there because I always say this with everything that's going on, no one's gonna save us but us.
Right.
That's it.
I,
That's
I
it.
don't know what happened. My connection got crazy down here.
Okay.
I don't know
I
what's
thought you
going on.
ran to go eat. I thought,
No, no, I would drop off like that. I was enjoying what Misha was talking about. You
yeah, I
know,
had to mess with you.
yeah, I know, right? It's very important. I'm glad you're doing that work in the space in which you're in, particularly starting at home, because we know charity begins at home.
Yes.
That form that you are allowing under will allow them to have a voice in their own communities and others, because they will not be afraid because their mom and dad, you mainly, are going out, sort of plowing the field so that they can walk freely therein. Applaud you on that. We need to
Yeah.
make sure we get uh, it because we're operating on a.
Hey, Valton.
Say, yeah,
Valton, you breaking up real bad. You getting real
yes.
garbled.
Can you
You're
hear me
gonna have to
now?
go on and buy those you have to go on and buy those extenders I've been telling you about. Just get the extenders.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you better now. Did
So
you
do
lean
we have?
forward or do something?
Yeah. Did we place on the in the chat how they can find her website and get her books and stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah, I have Hey
Okay.
Carter books posted. And I also have her Facebook and IG and Twitter
Now,
accounts loaded
I
there.
must admit, when I saw the Hey Carter, I thought you were referencing Hey Carter Law.
That's our
And I
booking
was like,
agent, Dr. Booker.
Oh.
right, that's how.
His name, he'll probably think you wrote this for him, okay?
Right, exactly. But ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Conversation is Art, and we have the Dr. Booker on here, Thomisha, and she has written some books.
Get it right
And
the first time, Tanisha.
Thomisha, um,
Yeah, you got it.
and
Mhm.
yeah, and I think that they're worthwhile, particularly if you are mentoring little boys and have little boys in your homes, or just have some nephews around you, or whatever the case may be, grandsons, because that what she has placed in those books, I think, will benefit you. They'll benefit you, not only but your household, because I'm sure once the young people read the book, or the book is read to them, it will change their lives and change the way they think about themselves. So again, ladies, my conversation is Art. We welcome you, Dr. Thomisha Booker. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And also, trying something new. I think I shared this with you, trying to just have our main platform streaming with
You
YouTube.
too.
So
Right.
hopefully our folks are able to find us. I embedded the link. So we may have to do some more education for them. We've been
Yeah.
talking to someone and that's what they recommended. Use
Oh,
YouTube as the primary and push people there
Um,
versus
uh, no. We have been talking to someone, our media advisor.
oh.
media advisor. Shout out
He's
to
our media
Strick
advisor.
City. Look, shout out to Strick City, DJ
Strick,
Strick.
DJ Strick. What's up,
He's a
boy?
he's a podcasting phenom. He really is. I
Yeah, he
mean, he
really
can tell
is.
you
Yeah.
everything. everything.
Yeah.
Dr. Brooker, I don't know. Are you familiar with Shy Speaks? She's a spoken
I
word artist. Look, she has a
She
song
did your
called
song in the
King.
beginning, right? I was right. Did
Yeah,
she do? Okay.
yeah, she did our jingle,
Yeah.
but she
Mhm.
has a song she did speaking to black males called King. And interestingly enough,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Is she my, publicist client too? Is she,
yes,
okay, yes, I do
yes,
know. Yes. Mhm.
yes,
Yes,
that song is powerful. And she
it is.
wrote it because she was saying, like, in case you need to hear from a queen, young man, you're
Yes.
a king, and speaking
Yes.
life into not just
Mhm.
boys, but to girls too. We need that
Yeah.
affirmation. But for the
Yes.
most part, unless it's some, even if a little girl may not get it from her dad, she gets some affirmations and everything. And I said,
Mhm.
sadly, we've all been guilty because we were brainwashed by the narrative of which
Mhm.
our ancestors came through of really demeaning ourselves. My
Yes.
pastor did a sermon last Sunday on self-hate.
Yes.
And y'all, internalized oppression is real. That
Mhm.
we start inflicting on us what was done to us externally because we are emotionally discombobulated as a race in trying to get stable. And I always tell people this: God has something great for us, because there's no way the enemy would spend all this time attacking one group of people all this time.
Yeah.
We Once we come up, as they say, we're gonna blow it out. We're gonna blow it all the way up when we come
Mhm.
up with it. We're gonna blow it all up. Really, these little snippets. We're gonna be the entire movie.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
and I really do believe, and not in a way to discard others, because I think one advantage we do have, and I hope we never lose it regardless, we care about people,
We
period.
do. And we include them
Yes.
Yes.
where
We're
we are
not going to try
excluded.
to be all rich and tell
Right.
the poor people, forget y'all, you on your
Hmm.
own. Now, some of
Hmm.
us a little extra and special. We just pray for them. We will pray for them. So, Dr. Booker, are you still practicing as you're
Mhm.
not doing social work,
Yeah.
you're a practice licensed therapist.
Yes. So, right
Okay.
now where I hang my license is I work in a hospital, in a safety net hospital, actually in Oakland,
Okay.
and we are serving very vulnerable populations there. And I oversee a few of their outpatient mental health system-wide departments there, mostly focused on adults in that area.
Okay.
Hmm.
I can relate to that. I worked at the safety net hospital here, but they so deemed it to close the inpatient and only kept the
Oh, wow.
outpatient part. It was very sad. I was a hospital,
Yeah.
Cooper Green hospital. So I definitely know. And that's where I started my career as a nurse. And I greatly, greatly learned to value social workers, because I
Yes.
think people may look at your profession like, oh, they're just a social worker. You all have to take counseling classes and learn how to
Mhm.
connect with people. And Lord, y'all memorize 500 million resources that nobody else know that exist. I
Right.
mean,
Dr.
I
DeMille,
have
she's talking about you.
I'm telling I have seen social workers go and negotiate. I call them barter with people to get people somewhere to sleep at night. It's just
Very
amazing.
multifaceted. Yes. Yes.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
just amazing with that.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this. In your let's talk about the mental illness we're seeing in these young kids now, and suicide. Jesus, I
Mhm.
was like, wow. The
Yes.
concept of suicide wasn't even a concept for kids. When I was
When we were
younger,
kids.
I didn't.
Right.
I don't know. I probably didn't learn about suicide till probably I was a teenager for real. But now we're seeing younger and younger kids. Have they identified, or from your perspective, what do you think is the driver behind that?
Yeah, so the research on suicide doesn't exactly pinpoint any one reason. There's lots of
Hmm.
determining factors or implications to why someone might die by suicide. And, you just have to think about the compounded stress that a child or a person is experiencing. I mean, you have families where they're, maybe living in poverty, maybe there's abuse in the home. Then you just have systematic oppression, white supremacy. You have all of these things together and combined, and not really knowing where to go to. A lot of times in communities, a lot of times the Black community, we're not talking about mental health. It's not okay to express your feelings.
Right.
You're not able to, you come to your mom or, your dad, your support people, your family, and you tell them how they're feeling. They say, "Oh, just pray about it."
Mm,
You don't feel like you can come to them so you can get actual help. You can seek a professional. So all of those things together, I mean, there's some clinical determinations that we kind of look at that can make someone maybe more likely
true.
to die by suicide. But when someone feels so alone and feels like they cannot go to anyone to get that support, it's really dangerous. We need to be able to open up these conversations, create space where children, where families, our communities can feel safe and comfortable to talk about this, to have conversations, and really in community, right? Like, we can't expect our children to go to their school counselor in a place where they don't feel safe. They need to be able to turn to their parents in their home where they feel, and their parents need to also have a community feel connected to where they can get the support.
Hmm.
Black parents don't know how to support themselves or having
True.
difficulties themselves navigating this world. So how can we support our children? I mean, like we were talking about resources earlier, we need it. We need resources. And again, at the end of the day, like making a safe space to be able to talk about what our children are experiencing and going through. I mean, I talked about some of the things that our children are going through, but that's not even an exhaustive list. I mean, talk about cyberbullying, just the
Yeah.
experiences of racism. I mean, even my son, who is so young, has already experiencing such just terrible experiences just related to who he is as a Black boy navigating predominantly white spaces. I mean, that's enough to cause stress and
Right.
anxiety and worry.
Hmm.
Walking into school where it doesn't feel safe. I mean, we've had school shootings happening where our children are supposed to be safe there and they're not. And then you're walking into spaces where you can't even see yourself reflected on the walls. You can't even see yourself
Hmm.
reflected in a book. All of those things are super scary for our kids. And there's so much that needs to be done to protect our children. And all of this is just more and more reasons why I continue to just elevate that Black joy and really just
Right.
show our children a positive reflection of themselves. And
Hmm.
not in a way that they see joy as the ultimate goal and the other feelings are not ones that they can
Yeah.
express, but that they know that joy is inherently inside of them, despite what the world tells them.
Right. Right. Well, again, I
Yeah.
applaud you for the work that you're doing because it's very important. It's very important. And when I began to write this next movie series, I'm probably going to call and lean on you for some information and get your
Mhm.
input so we can make this thing happen in a positive
Absolutely.
light for us all. Okay.
And we definitely need that more. I know last night at our church, after COVID, we kicked back off our youth
Right.
services. It's going to be every Wednesday. And my parent, he's only 40, but he's very intentional. We had it was a rapper. His name is Catrell. I can't think of his first name right now. Then we had Shy Speaks, and then we had Canton Jones. But in bringing Shy Speaks in, my pastor was like, I had told him about her. He was like, I had to have a female presence
Mhm.
as well.
Hmm.
And it was just listening to the two males really share their stories of how they got on the wrong path and got back. And the songs that he ministered with, not say minister with, that's exactly what he did, was just so empowering. And he was telling them, don't do it. It's like
Mhm.
when people try to take it down the wrong, don't do it because there's so much more. And
Hmm.
Shy, she really talked about why she wrote Kings for them,
Mhm.
so that no matter what you're going through, and shared her testimony, which I can talk about. She was a crack baby and the doctor said she was going to be mentally de- not developed. She would be delayed in this, delayed in that. And honey, she can spit a rhyme out
Well,
and
See,
memorize
see, go.
things. Yeah,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
then
Most
Canton
doctors
Jones
don't
took
have
it.
the last word. Not
Yeah,
our last.
and Canton Jones took another space in telling them, okay, when you get there, you got to pour into someone else
Yes.
Hmm.
that's like you. So we need a lot
Mm.
more of that, and just thinking. I know Dr. Coleman, who we have on monthly, he's a psychiatrist. He gives us some stats. Sometimes he leave us out. Look, you be grieving and your mouth be dropping open because he talks about the high rate of absent fathers in Black kids' lives and how that plays into their emotional well-being. And I think one of the ones, and you probably seen this with schools, is how Black boys are generally criminalized
Right.
very young with
Oh,
their
yes.
behavior. You know, nobody asks, "Are you hungry?" The reason you acting out.
Correct. Yes.
So with that, do you think social workers should be in schools? They
Oh,
got
yeah,
nurses, but I don't think that's
absolutely.
the one they.
I think Black social workers should be in schools. You know, I
Ooh,
think that all of the professionals and support, you know, system support connections in schools should also be reflective of the community they're serving. So making
Right.
sure that there are Black teachers and Black social workers and
yeah,
Black nursing staff and Black leaders. And absolutely, I mean, Black children, they're seen more aggressive, more mature. And this happened to my son when he was just 2. I always share this story. When my son was 2 years old, his daycare teacher came to us and said that she was concerned because Carter was making a gun out of Legos. And I said, well, how do you know what he made was a gun? Because she's already making an association that, and she said, because it was an L shape and he was going like this. Psh, 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 psh. I said, you know, if you did not ask him what that was, you don't know what that is. And first of all, because he's 2, it is age appropriate for him to be making a gun out of Legos. Superheroes have guns,
oh my
you know,
goodness.
so I don't have any concern about him doing that if that was what he was doing. And secondly, who's to say it's not a rocket ship or whatever else his imagination was going to? But she was so concerned with that and wanted to tell me about her concern. And she was already, you know, perpetuating this false narrative that Black children are aggressive and dangerous and violent. And you know, that's the kind of thing that is I'm really passionate about too, is that we are showing the world what happy Black children look like, because they are so
Yes.
stripped from their innocence and just not being able to be childlike. Like our kids can't make mistakes, they can't be rambunctious and have energy and, you know, and do the things that children love to do, but their counterparts, other white children, get to do those things. And
Without any judgment. Well, they can tear down a building and they attribute it to, oh, it's a mental health crisis. I think of the opioid addiction. It's a mental health crisis, but the crack addiction was just like, oh, they're killing each other off. It wasn't viewed as that. And they went to prison or jail for a
And none of
long
that was
time.
our direct fault, right? Like all of that was things that are done to us and done to our communities. So it's unfortunate, and it's even more than that. Actually, yesterday I was at the doctor with my son, and this doctor comes in and he looks at my son. He said, "Oh, Carter, that's such a nice name. When you grow up, you're going to be a basketball player." And I'm like, please stop with that narrative. It's old, you know, and it's giving racist. So stop. But they, you know, need education and need training, but you know, they love to associate our Black boys and men with only playing sports. And of course, if my son wants to play basketball or any other sport, I of course support him, but that is not the only thing he can do. And we're
Right.
not raising him to want to grow up and be a profession or just to have a job. You know, we asked Carter, what do you want to be when you grow up? Free, happy, emotionally whole. That's the goal. And
Mhm.
so, you know, you see my son speak the spirit of rocket scientist, mathematician, lawyer,
Yeah.
doctor. And it's so interesting that a physician, why wouldn't you be telling him he can grow up to be a doctor? Because that's what you know how to do. You know nothing
And that's
Right.
about
what
being
you are. That's what I'm saying.
that's
That's
what
what
you
you
are.
are.
Exactly. So tell him he can do that and tell him how to do that because you know how. So that's, you know, that's just a typical day of being a Black
Everything.
parent, being
Well,
a Black
let's
son.
talk about something you mentioned earlier because I'm
Mhm.
real passionate about this. I don't believe Black parents or any parent for that matter should allow their child to go to a school for sure that they are truly a minority. I just think that that's not a good, that is a recipe to me almost for disaster because your child is going to be mistreated. It's they have not proven that to be wrong. Even when I moved and left a Birmingham school system because I was just frustrated with the chaos, I was very deliberate in seeking out a very diverse because I know how I am, but I more so know how my husband is too about his kids, and that would not have worked. And I have a friend of mine. She has her child in like a pre-K or something, and the first thing I asked her, "How many other Black kids are there?" "Oh, like two." Then she was like, "Oh, but there are Black teachers there." I was like, "How many?" I said, "But your child sent a Black teacher, but they're not. They don't have any playmates really that look like them." And I know we want our kids to have a good education, but to me, it's not worth sacrificing your child's emotional and mental happiness because you can supplement their education at the end of the day, but
Mhm.
you can't fix once they've been scarred. So, what's your thought on that? Should we be more
Mhm.
intentional about where we allow our children to attend school or even some of these sports that they're
Mhm.
the odd man out or odd girl out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say from experience, going to predominantly white schools, especially like in high school, it's a very painful and uncomfortable experience and definitely impacts your life. And my children also go to predominantly white schools, and it has been very difficult to navigate. As a mother, I do prioritize and feel more strongly that I want my children in schools where they have diversity, where there are Black teachers and Black faculty, and they can have Black friends,
Hmm.
and a diverse friends too. We value having
Yeah.
diverse friends. And I will also say that it's difficult, especially where I live, to find that. So, for example, we were looking at an Afrocentric school that is close to us, but it's far. It's about 30 to 45 minutes away to go to that school. And so we're wanting that, looking for that, but it's a huge commitment. So we're in that space right now where we're like, okay, as you said, what do we value most? What is most important to us? So we kind of basically kind of set a prioritization of what's important to us. So if we cannot find schools where there are a lot of Black students, then we're looking for schools that value diversity, that are having conversations about racism,
Hmm.
that want to elevate Black voices and are intentional about their curriculum. So I encourage parents to, when they're going into these schools, to ask these questions. One of the things that I ask is, how do you honor Black history? How do you celebrate Black history pioneers? How do you teach American history? What does that mean to you? Where Let me look inside your classroom. I'll do a gallery walk in the classroom where I can see, where can I find images of myself and my children
Hmm.
reflected on the walls and in the curriculum. And I'll tell you, it's a very tough conversation. I'm in the process touring um, preschools for my daughter, and I'm constantly in that space because I have not found the space that I feel most comfortable with. And I was just out of school and I noticed they had a calendar of events, and Black History Month was not on there, but they did have other cultural
Hmm.
holidays and celebrations listed. And when I asked about it, she said, well, we're not allowed to celebrate certain holidays, and we have to make sure it's equitable. And,
I'll
then
be like,
I
bye.
Right, exactly. Then I have to then decide at that moment, am I going to then tell her about herself and make this a teaching moment? Am I going to be angry because I'm very upset that this continues to happen? Or am I just going to walk out the door because I don't have time for
Right,
this BS,
right.
So that's the world we navigate in. I think, just going back to your question, I agree that it's definitely better for our overall mental health and well-being if we are in spaces that we can see ourselves reflected in, and there is a diverse attendance of students. I also know that not all parents, especially in California, are we able to make that decision. But for me and my children and those that, I do a lot of book readings where I make it interactive and I'm talking to children about the importance of knowing who you are and where you come from. And so I am arming my children with those resources that when you step into these spaces, I talk to them very intentionally about what they're going to be coming up against, what the world and the messages that they're going to be receiving, and how they need to stand in the fullness of who they are in those spaces. My son coming home telling me he wants to flatten his curls, and me having to, talk to him about that and how he's going to be coming up against that throughout his life, despite him
Yeah.
hearing these positive messages that he hears from me.
And I think that's what a lot of white people don't get. We have to literally arm our children for war
Mm-hmm.
as children. And sadly, it's getting younger and younger and younger
Yes.
that you got to have this conversation. I know once my son was in middle school, and he was an average height kid, but
Mm-hmm.
so happened to be a young white boy. He kept picking at him. Now, my son's very laid back. He's not going to bother anybody. Well, one day, the straw that broke the camel's back. And we had said something to the principal earlier. So I get a call at work. Oh, Miss Jones, Cameron, I thought it was going to be bad. He was towering. Now he's towering over this white boy that's been harassing him. And when he said those words, I said, so what you're saying, that you were afraid that my black son was going to harm the white boy that we've talked to you about harassing him. I said, is that why you calling me on my job?
Mm-hmm.
I said, no. He was like, we talking about in school, not on my watch. It will
No,
not
no.
happen. So me and
I
my
get
husband, we went up
suspension.
there and met with him. I was like, no. I'm like, Cameron is average height. He's 23 now and a little over 6 feet. I mean, it was not like he was 6'7" or 6'8" and 280 pounds,
Right.
but it was the fact that he was a black boy. But, and
Right.
I know a lot of times parents will say, well, for peace sake, well, I'm going to tell y'all right now, I'm not that parent going to be saying pray when something go down.
And I
Okay.
ain't
Right.
Pete.
I'm going to tell
And I
y'all
ain't
post my
Pete.
bail because I'm going to start a
Yeah.
revolution. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's what we need. It's going to take a revolution
Mm-hmm.
to get things to change, because as we're seeing with all that has happened, it's not changing.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually digging in deeper.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. They find
So
all the creative ways to completely just terrorize us. Yes. And my son knows. I tell him, you let me know if anybody is messing with you. And I also, it's also important to teach our children how to stand up to adults, because a lot
yeah,
of
that's
times
good.
we're in
Mm.
schools, our kids, we teach them to respect adults. It's the teacher,
Yeah,
we don't want them to be disrespectful. I feel like respect is a notion of white supremacy when you really look at it, but that's a different topic. But I really try to encourage him to get comfortable when a teacher is doing something that you disagree with, and listen to your body, listen to yourself. When you know and you hear, you feel that uncomfortability, something is right, you let them know. But it also
yeah,
starts with them practicing on you. So parents out there, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot expect your child and teach them to have a voice when they can't tell you about yourself
Exactly. Say it again.
first.
Say it again. Say it again for the ones in the back.
You're going to have to get comfortable with them using that voice against you. So Carter,
Mhm.
again, is a very confident boy, and he holds me and my husband accountable. We respect his voice. We want to hear it. And it feels uncomfortable, especially when, growing up, I was raised in a very much kids are seen and not heard. And, it's what my mom said, all of that. And so it's
Yeah.
difficult when you hear a child tell you no, or tell your child, I don't like that, or tell you that you've done something wrong. You're going to have to get comfortable with saying, I'm sorry. You're going to have to get
Yeah.
comfortable with them letting you know how they feel about things and expressing those strong feelings. So that way, when their teacher or principal or anybody else in their life is disrespecting them, they can at that time use that voice and set a boundary.
That's very important. You know, I did that with my children. And some people took issue like, well, you're letting her question you. I could question my parents, and
Absolutely.
they were of the old generation.
Yes.
And my mom was like this. She was like, you know, I'm gonna get it wrong sometime. And the thing, I've gone back and with both my kids and like, you know what? Probably the way, that wasn't the best way for me to have handled that. So I always tell
Yeah.
them, as you grow into your life, if you have a family or whatever spaces you're in, make sure you correct
Mhm.
what needs to be corrected
Yes.
with everything.
Yes.
And you could, I used to hate, and my mom never said this to me, because I said so.
Right.
What does that
That's not
mean?
a valid reason. That's not a valid reason.
Yeah, because you said so doesn't mean it makes sense
Right.
or rational. And I think
Right.
one of the things, how we want people to function like we do. You have to give
Right.
people their own space, even with
Yes.
raising kids. My children are very different. My daughter
Yes.
is very outgoing, go get her. My son is so laid back and chill. He could just be by himself, and he probably got like two people he really calls friend in his circle, and that's okay. You can't force people to be who they're not.
Mhm.
And they'll figure it out, as we all did. I mean, life is evolving and we're ever changing. But for these books, I mean, I read I think this one is Brent. I love this. Froze, Braids, Fades, and Waves. Oh, I
Yes.
love that name. That is simply awesome. And I love the way you did the rhyming with
Yes.
the way you shared it, because it's real simple and to the point. But my
Mhm.
favorite one is when you was like, "No, you can't touch my hair."
No. Please
That
no.
was, oh, tell me about it. One thing I love about us and our diversity, we can wear it straight, kinky, twisted,
Anywhere.
locked,
Ball.
Yes.
ball. Don't be
Yes.
letting me little ball.
There's a page in the Froze book where it has my husband who's bald and his dad and his grandparents all bald, and I always just laugh because I'm like, it's a book about hair, but that's the trajectory of the Black man hair experience.
Yeah.
Right,
And what
right.
I'm gonna do, you all real quick, I'm gonna take us off the screen. I want to put this up because I made this
Mhm.
so our audience can see. Um, Let me take your name off, and they can see the emerging.
Yes.
It say encouraging Black boys. Hey Carter Books, and that's the froze, braids, and fades. You all go to her
Yes.
website for sure and order these books. Get
Mhm.
that for Christmas. Stop buying all these
Yeah.
toys. Get something that's gonna
Yeah,
build these children up. Because
right,
me
right.
personally, and I hope God I'm wrong, I think the things we're experiencing are gonna get worse. Um, I I have maybe 20% faith in, I hate to say faith, that ain't what I have in it anyway. With DEI initiatives, I just don't have any. I mean, what's your thoughts on the DEI initiatives?
Diversity and
Did you hear me,
inclusion.
Dr. Booker?
Keep
Did she freeze?
frozen.
What's your thoughts on it, Valta, until she comes back?
Inclusion is one of the things I used to teach many years ago when I was VP of HR.
Uh-huh.
And it's a hard sell. They do that as a pacification. Um, some people understand what it means to include folk and have a diverse workforce, but as it goes higher, the people
Yeah.
that need to hear it don't have a seat at the table. So,
Yeah.
or if
It's
there
got
is
to
a
be from
person who,
top down.
yeah, so if there's a person at the table, they are the ones that are told to push it down to the folks that look like them, you know.
Okay.
So,
I was trying
but
to see if I
anyway,
could get her back.
yeah, I think it's about an
Yeah.
hour into this conversation. We need to wrap it up so she can get
Yeah.
back to her family.
Yeah. Dr. Booker, you back?
You guys hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. You froze.
I am.
But we
Okay.
were getting ready to close, and
Yes.
what
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
asked you about was
Yes.
DEI. What's your
Mhm.
thoughts on DEI? Because I don't have much trust in them anymore. About 20, I'm on 20% fumes when it comes to DEI initiatives.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's difficult to wrap your mind around this like idea that we need to be included.
Yeah.
And it sometimes I think like, is that really what we want? And sometimes it really seems really performative. There's a lot of organizations who are like, we're focused on DEI and we have, this department. And really, unless you are dismantling white supremacy, there's really not really a point to have a focus on DEI unless it's rooted in dismantling white supremacy and calling that out for what it is. So yeah, that's my take on the DEI. Of course, if it's set up in a way that is doing what it's meant to be and definitely beneficial for Black people specifically, then great. But I think a lot of organizations are developing, DEI departments just to say that they're doing it.
They're
Right.
doing a check box. They're checking the
Exactly.
box with it. I got
Exactly.
you. That's my
Yes.
thoughts.
I did want to share one thing before we go. For a long time, I was thinking about launching a Brown Boy Joy Day and went back and forth about when I was going to do that. But we are launching it today. It's our first, our inaugural celebration this year on July 1st is Brown Boy Joy Day. And we are asking everyone on social media that day to post photos and videos of joyful Black and brown boys and men, to tell us what Brown Boy Joy means to you, and to just elevate Black joy and, fill the internet with social media with just smiling Black, beautiful, handsome boys and men on that day, so that we continue to just challenge those false narratives that exist for Black boys.
Let me ask you this, doctor, because I just thought about it when you said Brown Boy Joy Day. Has anyone tried to get you connected with LeVar Burton?
That is on my list. I would love to be on, who doesn't love LeVar Burton and Reading Rainbow? And one day I wish I could do something similar to that and have my own segment. But yes, I would love to be connected with him.
Yes, because he inspired a lot of Black people and brown people to start reading
Absolutely.
Rainbow. And so, look, I was laughing. I was like, was it Wheel of Fortune or whoever didn't want him? We don't care. We
Right.
needed him to keep doing what he's doing. Yeah, Jeopardy. And I love when he came back, because they circled back. He was like, nah, that wasn't for me. That wasn't meant to be for me, which is great.
It was for him to be for him.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Val looked like she fell over. Val?
You there, Val?
Yeah, it sort of went out. Yeah. I see.
Yeah. So it's cloudy over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, folks, y'all have a good
anyway.
night. Sorry about it going like this with the stream coming up.
Yeah. But Doc, we appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Keep doing what you're doing. We're praying for your work.
Thank you. Yes.
And tell Carter and the family hello.
I will. Thank you both so much. I enjoyed myself.
Okay.
Yes.
And you stay on, Thomisha, while we close the stream.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Now, what has happened to Valton? He really doing something.
I'm not doing anything but sitting here. What's going on? Does it look funny?
Yeah. We don't even see you anymore.
Really?
I see him, hear him, and actually you look blurry to
yeah,
me.
You look
more,
fuzzy,
right?
Val.
Well, see, I'm looking fuzzy to you. You're the only one looking fuzzy to me. Dr. Booker, you looking straight.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'm gonna ease off.
Okay.
Now Val's gone.
Oh, there you go.
Now it's you and I. Now Val's coming in on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
We're still live, Val.
No, I just ended. It's ended.
It says live on my side.
Oh no, I'm controlling it. It's